Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards.
If you're listening to this podcast, then you're in great company. We've got thousands of listeners who have a thirst for continual improvement and raising standards in business. Whether your interest is in quality, sustainability, or risk standards, I'd love to welcome you as a member to our online platform for all things ISO, the ISology Hub. The ISology Hub is the leading place to get access to all of your online resources, from in-depth training courses through to our very popular coffee break training, to templates and action plans and many other resources to help raise standards. As a member, you get access to over 100 courses, taking you from learner to practitioner to leader. The ISology Hub has all the resources that you need, which will really help to make your life easier and to help improve compliance in those business critical areas. So if you'd like access to learning and compliance resources ranging from data privacy to environmental management, anti-bribery, business continuity, quality, health and safety, to name just but a few, the list is endless actually, then we'd love for you to come and join us. Just head over to the isologyhub.com.
Hello everybody, welcome to another ISO show. I'm Ian Battersby, Senior Consultant at Blackmores UK Limited. Today I'm to talk about a subject that is really evolving quite rapidly. We're talking about artificial intelligence resilience, the risks posed by artificial intelligence to the way we work. I'm joined by a partner of ours, Mark Phillip, who is the Information and Security Manager at Cloud Direct. I'll ask Mark a little bit about what Cloud Direct offer in a moment, but welcome, Mark. Good to see you and hear you today. Looking forward to a talk.
Morning, yes, great. Thanks for having me here. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good. This series is illuminating, to say the least. As I say quite often to our listeners, I'm talking about subjects where I'm not an expert in it. It's not necessarily my field. But I've got a number of colleagues who present an awful lot of information to us about the world of IT security, artificial intelligence, and the like. And I find them quite fascinating, the things they're sharing with us. But before we begin, a little bit about you, Mark. You are, as I said, Information and Security Manager at Cloud Direct. What about you, though, as a person? Can you tell me and our listeners something about you that not many people know? And it's a family show, so be careful.
Yeah. So some people may know this if they do follow me on socials, but it still catches people out. So I'm a very, very amateur triathlete. It's a hobby of mine. I got into about 5 years ago. And actually, in London this year at an event, I was very fortunate to bump into, at the sort of swim practice, Alistair Brownlee.
Right.
Our two-time gold Olympic medalist in triathlon, who's just announced his retirement last month, actually. But I got to have a quick 5-minute chat with him at the side of the lake whilst we were pulling our wetsuits off.
Excellent. Well, I'm in Leeds at the moment, and I live in an area of Leeds called Horsforth. We actually have a local pub, the Brownlee Arms, named after the Brownlee brothers.
Oh.
We have a Brownlee community centre where there's a library and studios and things like that, because they're quite local to us. It's a big thing here in Leeds. When the international events are on, it's quite exciting to see the two boys running. So, yeah, good to know.
Yeah, I was Johnny as well, yeah. And I actually raced the race in Leeds a couple of years back, the World Championship, as a very much an amateur. Also Ironman has just announced Leeds next year as well. They're coming back, so around Hay Park. So it's interesting times.
Yeah, great, great. Oh, that's really good to hear that. Really good. So back to Cloud Direct, back to the boring stuff then now, eh?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what Cloud Direct does, how they can support people.
So CloudDirect, we were founded in 2003. We're a Microsoft Azure Expert MSP. That is the top Microsoft accreditation that any partner can hold. And it puts us in 0.5% of Microsoft partners globally. It's an extremely rare accreditation to have. The audits we go through are akin to an ISO in the level of depth and breadth of the business that get audited by an external auditor. So it is really stringent, but it showcases our capabilities across the whole Microsoft stack. So supporting that, we've got a number of Microsoft Solution Partner designations and specializations, including in data and AI. So we actually hold,
Right.
again, accreditations in those areas. So essentially for us, we offer consultancy, professional and managed services to our customers, specializing in Microsoft Cloud. We're all about helping our customers achieve more through the use of those technologies and across the various areas. Obviously, we're talking about AI today, but underpinned, of course, by security across that whole stack.
Yes, indeed.
Digital transformation, modernization, all of that. Yes.
And on the subject you've touched on, the risk of AI, as I said already, this is not my field of expertise, but I rely on my colleagues to throw useful information. And last month, I was staggered to read a report which was shared by my colleague Sarah regarding the Gemini Research Institute's findings. 97% of organizations using generative AI have faced security incidents or data breaches which are linked to that technology at some point this year. That's quite a remarkable sort of statistic, I find. Does that chime with what you understand the world to be like now with respect to AI risk?
Yes, I think one of the big challenges we're seeing is that it's so new for many people, and there's all these
Mm-hmm.
tools. And obviously, they're getting pushed by the various the companies and Microsoft and the many others out there who are producing these platforms, and a lot of people are jumping towards it. But I think as well, where it's also new and people are learning it, there's a lack almost sometimes of the underpinning sort of risk assessment, the
Mm-hmm.
preparation, the thought about if I'm putting data into an AI platform or I'm leveraging it in some way, well, what's that actually doing with that data?
Mm.
That whole sort of piece, and this is a massive topic in itself. So yeah, it certainly doesn't surprise me. And equally, as with any technology, the criminals are ahead of the game. So
Indeed.
they will be leveraging it as well, very much as we've seen with deep fakes and we've seen with the old fake emails we all get. They're getting better all the time.
Yeah. I mean, they used to be so obvious, didn't they? That's the spelling mistakes, the poor addresses, that sort of thing. So, what exactly is AI resilience then? It is becoming important, but can you put your finger on anything in particular that's making it so important?
Yeah, so I mean, as a sort of as a headline statement, it's really the resilience is equipping businesses, and it's equipping with the processes, the controls, and the capabilities, so they can anticipate and mitigate the risks around the use of those AI technologies deployment in the business. So that's the sort of formal sort of headline. I think in practice that means many different things to different people.
Yeah.
Because if we come back to our sort of risk based approach, and I'm probably going to touch on this a few times today, how AI is being used will vary in different industries, in different businesses. We've seen in things like research, the use of AI and machine learning in those areas, is accelerating things like cancer research, for example, and
Yes. Uh-huh.
just huge benefit there. But obviously, that's completely different to a business perhaps like ourselves, where
Hmm.
we're leveraging AI, particularly in things like efficiency around our office use.
Right.
Yesterday I was in a meeting. We were discussing some work that a customer wanted, which is quite risky. So we had a risk meeting around that, and it was great. We used Copilot, and it generated. We had a nice long list of things we had to go through with the customer that we worked through, and we used Copilot and the transcripts, and it gave me all of the things, and it said, "Mark's going to do this, and my colleague's going to do that, and the customer's going to have to sign off on this," and it was absolutely perfect. So huge differences, and that resilience. To come back to your question, there is you've got to look at what your organisation's using it for? What and where are then the inherent risks in that? Things like what data you're processing and where that data is held and all of that. And I think that's that resilience. Then you can apply once you've got those risks, of course, as we would in any risk-based approach
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
for us. And then we can get our resilience working accordingly.
So you basically, if you've got your head around the format of ISO standards, the risk-based approach will be supportive of this, won't it? Yeah. So how can an organisation assess their current level of AI resilience and identify potential vulnerabilities that they may face?
So I think the first thing for organisations and to be is just embrace it. And AI is not going anywhere. You can't kind of put your head in
Yeah.
the sand. Yeah, I know it might sound slightly obvious, but whether you're using it extensively or not, it's here to stay. So I think that's actually a first sort of almost a mindset piece to start on this road. Something I mentioned just now, understand your use cases in your business. So obviously we've gone through this ourselves internally, not just what we do with customers. So this year, earlier this year, when we began using Copilot, particularly from Microsoft. So yeah, I had to look at, right, well, where are we using that tool in the business? What data is it sort of touching? What are we putting into it? How do Microsoft deal with that as a platform? Are they storing any of that data?
Right, yeah.
All of that. So it's understanding those use cases, understanding what the technologies are you're using, and equally how it can benefit. This isn't just a pure sort of governance thing. This has got to be entwined with those business benefits to get the most out of it. So looking at all that, you then understand kind of where you're going with it. I think also then if you're starting at ground zero, look at the best practices from people like the ICO, the NCSC. They've got tons of guidance out there,
Right.
and it's really good. It's really clear to read. And I've actually used some of that ourselves for our own AI guidance policies, actually, that I've written earlier this year. So pull for because it's really well done. So there's some great free resources there. ISO 42001, of course, came out this year.
Yes.
Very new for a lot of people. I mean, we're going for it just yet, but it is under consideration. But again, that framework, it complements the likes of 27001 very well. So I think, again, you can start using those resources to then start building up, say, okay, well, the ICO are talking about understanding this topic. We haven't got a clue on it. Okay, well, I know I've got to go and do some of that. And that almost then builds up your kind of gap analysis of the areas that you do or don't know. It helps you put some structure. And then, and again, of course, coming back to those sort of use cases and the technologies in use, it's then that risk assessment around that. So,
Yeah.
for me, we don't process a lot of personal data, certainly no health data or anything. So those kind of, the research use case I mentioned earlier doesn't apply to us. But we do have customer data. We do have things like a lot of confidential business data, as you'd imagine, being an MSP. So I'm looking and saying, well, does AI pose a risk to those? And again, obviously, how do we mitigate? Well, be careful what we use where, obviously, in the sense of what data we're putting into the platforms.
Indeed, indeed.
And then you're going to build out a gap analysis. You're going to build out where your gaps are against more the legal or the sort of regulatory requirements, some of the best practices, and also your own risks as well, because that's going to feed into that gap.
Yep.
Hopefully, out of all of that, you're going to start building up a really great picture of what you need to do that is right for you and your organisation. And I think that's the key thing there.
Yeah. And you've touched on that structure, and what standards provide is that form of structure in order to plan ahead, really. It's interesting that the article talks about using artificial intelligence to increase resilience, a sort of dichotomy there, that you're using the very thing in order to counteract it.
Yeah.
And I think it cited that some research by Microsoft that organizations using AI to counter AI are twice as resilient, which is quite an amusing sort of statistic. How can AI, though, be used? What tools you have within AI to actually enhance your security and improve system resilience?
So there are some great. I'm going to stick with Microsoft, so that's certainly where we live every time. But there's similar things in the other partners as well. But the tools that are coming out, particularly around the sort of security and the resilience side, I'll just touch on some of those as an example. just starting to embrace those tools and make use of them it essentially helps fill gaps. So a lot of the monitoring, there's a lot of monitoring in place across the Microsoft stack already in security. And it gives you some nice alerts, and you can take those alerts, give them to your IT team, and they can do things. So if you had malware detected on a laptop, it'll tell you. Where we're now moving forward, though, is a lot more with the automation and the intelligence of that automation from the AI. So now we can have monitoring, and that will then pick up an alert, and it will then do a set of tasks with it. So actually, you've almost got a virtual security response happening. So whether you're resource limited or it's just there's always going to be that time lag before someone picks it up, analyzes it as a human, you could actually have that platform monitoring and monitoring in ways you wouldn't even think to look for and doing things already for you. So it might be as simple as your initial containment. Malware's detected, contain the laptop. All of that happens in real time and can happen all automatically. And AI is only enriching the quality of that, something that's been around for a while. But I think AI is really starting to enrich that. And when we look at cyber threats and things like brute force attacks and things, again, there's a lot more intelligence through the AI backends now that are looking for those behaviors. So it's not just have I tried to log in 10 times in a minute, it's is that coming from another country, or is it always coming from a particular IP? There's all kinds of different things that factor.
Yes.
And it's giving that literally real time. Yeah.
And there are two sides to this in a way. You've used the word embrace possibly on more than one occasion so far. And any attitude or a delay in accepting what AI now is becoming risks one of two undesirable scenarios. The first is where the AI risks manifest themselves in what could be quite widespread harm. And the other is the converse of that, where the fear of AI prevents people from adopting it and you don't realise the benefits that the technology can bring to you. So it is a double-sided coin, really, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. And I think, and actually, there's a couple of key things. There is that fear. And this is why I say I think fear of it a lot of the time at the moment, because it's still so relatively new, is that people just don't understand what it's doing or the benefits, most importantly, that it can bring. And again, I come back again to what I said earlier about understanding what you could do, what's right for your business.
Mm-hmm.
If you kind of get that straight, then that's where you can really start understanding and breaking down some of that fear and then potentially get the benefits from it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Can't put your head in the sand, at least.
You just said it. It's so new. I mean, a year, 15 months ago, 18 months ago, people were talking about AI as the future. Now it's very much the here and now. So how do people stay ahead of the curve in this evolving landscape of AI and respond to threats and vulnerabilities? Because they are literally changing daily, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think there's so many great resources out there now. And again, I'll just sticking with Microsoft again. They are putting so much content out across things like their various social media feeds, their blogs. They're also doing loads of free webinars, free events
Mm-hmm.
consistently. And it's very easy. You can go onto the sort of Microsoft sites, blog sites, and a website and their events sites, and you can sign up for notifications. Many people who are using the Microsoft products themselves will get also the notifications through via the sort of email marketing. And that's all free. And there's some really great resources there. So almost straight from the horse's mouth. So as they're seeing how the AI is being evolved, what they're doing in that space as well, they're then putting out tons of content on the various flavors there. So there's loads of great resources in that way. And there's obviously a lot of other partners and vendors that are doing very similar things. I mean, my only tip sometimes with this is if you're particularly newer to and trying to really break this down and understand it, I would recommend looking at, don't just jumping for the first sort of shiny sort of advert webinar you see. Go to people like Microsoft, like the NCSC, like, IASB in the sense they do a lot of things like Cyber Essentials and things, those sort of not the market leaders or the more sort of regulatory bodies, they're a great place to start because they're putting out, I would almost say, the sort of truest content. Because then there's some other content being put out that is then more the interpretation of. And particularly if you're newer, of course, how do you know what's the sort of good, bad, and ugly? There's so much out there. So I think stick with people like Microsoft and the other leading vendors as well that are doing work in this space, they're doing some great thought leadership. And then if you combine that with sort of more trusted partners or the regulatory bodies, then they're putting out great content. There's tons there. Obviously, you can work with partners such as Cloud Directs as well. People like us, we work very hard on gaining those Microsoft certifications.
Yes.
And when you're dealing with people like an Azure Expert MSP, it's almost as if you're one step away from Microsoft. And our job is to really help you understand how it applies to your business. Talking yet again about those use cases. Our job is to help you translate that. So that's another piece you use, work with a partner who specializes, but look for those accreditations. As I mentioned earlier, we've got an accreditation from Microsoft in data and AI. Look for those sorts of things, whether it is Microsoft or whether it's a partner who specializes in AWS. I'm sure they've got equivalents there. Look for that. It's a great way of sort of quality checking. And equally look at 42001 as well. Obviously, it is a new standard.
Well, yes, indeed. And Blackmores ran an event only last week, a workshop on 42001, focusing on resilience. So we're here to help as well. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, this is the other, and we're talking about trusted partners. We work with Blackmores, as you mentioned in your intro, and the help we get from Blackmores is invaluable to us for helping us keep up to date as much as we're trying to be at the sort of forefront of this for our partners, and particularly from the Microsoft perspective. It's also huge benefit, the value we get from our partnership with Blackmores there to help us and keep us up to date, in the governance area.
Yeah. There's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot of detail, a lot of resource that you have to wade through. And then things still go wrong, though. There are moments in life where it doesn't all go to plan. And across all the standards, we talk about emergencies and incidents and the like and the response to that. What are some of the best practices for incident response and recovery when it comes to artificial intelligence then?
Yeah, so I don't like to try and treat AI differently in this case, and I'm going to harken back over the last couple of years here as well. We saw the move over, particularly through the pandemic, with the move to cloud computing. I mean, obviously it was starting before the pandemic, but that really accelerated and pushed people across the line in many cases. Remote working, hybrid working, it's constantly shifting, but it's certainly again here to stay. We've had to adapt to these things over time, and I don't see how any different. The key here is embed it through all of your business planning, your governance planning, resiliency planning, as you would have done with things like moving to cloud compute, with things like remote working and the other shifts that we've seen over the last few years. The sort of frameworks that we've already got through, things like ISO 27001, 20,000 for your service management, 22301 for continuity planning, those risk assessments, the business impact assessments, all of that, the continuity plans, the recovery plans. Many of us have got all those in place already. If you haven't, we obviously should have.
Yeah, it's good business.
Making sure they are truly sort of agnostic across the whole business. They cover anything. So if you're using AI, you plumb that into that whole framework in the same way as you would have done when we started having more remote working.
Yeah.
Whereas previously you worked in an office. That raised new risks. That whole hybrid piece. Moves to cloud compute, it has different risks, threats, and opportunities itself. AI, I don't see AI differently in that more sort of governance context. And that's, I think, key there. But really embed it, really make it part of it as much as any of those other shifts that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that practicing emergency scenarios is always of great benefit.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I want you to look into your crystal ball now, Mark. What are your predictions for the future of resilience in this field? And the challenges and opportunities. Let's not forget that lie ahead.
Yeah, and I think this is the key. People do need to look at what is the opportunity here. And I think certainly over the next year or so, I think there is still going to be a lot of, I'll say, mixed information and a lack of understanding. People are still going to be learning. This doesn't take time. So I think we're still going to see a lot of that kind of people finding their feet over the coming year and trying to get better understanding, as some of the stuff we touched on today. I think some of the biggest challenges, in fact, it's exactly what we were just talking about, is how organisations embed AI across the organisation, both in their everyday business operations, their strategic planning, but also their governance and their resiliency planning. And I think how they actually embed that truly across all of that is going to be a massive challenge. I think, again, I'll take the home working example. People did it at a pace. kind of were forced to. AI in some ways, people are sort of being a bit dragged, kicking and screaming. The next challenge is, right, how do we really embed this and just make it part of our DNA? And that's going to be a big finding how we can then, with that as well, fully leverage it. And that's a huge challenge that I think people are still trying to figure out. The other big risk, though, I can see is certainly around data privacy and personal data. We touched on things like the fraudulent use of scams earlier and things there. Yeah, that ties in with this. I think that is a massive risk point. Education around that, I think certainly something people are going to have to look at over the next year, and how to better use the platform. So things like thinking about, what are you putting into that AI platform, for example? Are we happy that people can use any AI platform, or do we stick with perhaps Copilot from Microsoft or
Trusted platform, yeah.
yes, and understand where's that data going? How's it being used?
Yes.
Is it out of your control? All of that. But if you can then work through that, I think that the payoff is potentially huge, because if you can actually be leveraging these platforms again to get the most out of them, which was, come back to those sort of business use cases we spoke about earlier. Again, actually, it's about, I guess the thing for me to summarize it would be, none of this is say don't use AI for any second thing. It's about use it safely and use it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you get all that risk assessment and all that modeling done first, and that's going to be that big challenge over the next year, then the payoff is potentially huge, I think.
Yeah, yeah. In amongst all of the things you said just then, you used one of my favourite words, which is governance. Because all the great disasters in business over time stem from a lack of that very thing. So that's a great and probably a great word to end on. Now, that's AI. Before we leave, Mike, that's been fabulous. This is a world that's not going to exist without AI in the future, isn't it? It is here to stay, and we have to accept it, embrace it, and use it to our own benefit, and protect ourselves from those who want to use it to their benefit, I suppose. So everything you've said today has been insightful and really, really fascinating. So before we leave you to go and delve into the world of cybersecurity some more, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Firstly, if you could gift a book to somebody, what book would that be and why?
So for me, whenever I'm reading books, for me, reading is escapism. It's about being able to take yourself away, from everyday life. So, I mean, there are great books out there in the more professional world, name, but I love the escapism of reading. So for me, actually, one of my favourites is actually The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy.
All right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with that particular one, when they made the film of the book, Tom Clancy was involved in the production very closely. So the film mirrors the book almost perfectly.
Right. Oh, that's rare.
So when I'm reading it and I'm in that escapism, I'm immersing myself in that book. I find that actually the visualizations I'm getting are so much more, because I'm picturing Jack Ryan and I'm picturing Baldwin's portrayal of him and I'm picturing the other characters and they're on that submarine and
Yeah.
Sean Connery and all that. And
Yes, yes.
that visualization and that escapism is almost, it takes me away even further. So I love it for that.
It is so rare that a film depicts what people expect from the book. I've not read the book. I've not read any of that series at all. But I remember watching the film when it came out, yeah, which I enjoyed. And another question: what is your favourite quote? And would you like to leave our listeners with a pearl of wisdom from that quote?
The quote, it's a Star Wars one. I have a bad feeling about this. Now, why do I love it? It crops up throughout Star Wars. Big Star Wars fan, having since I was a child. But actually, how many times and particularly in the governance and cybersecurity world, do you see something playing out? You see something happening, and you have that oh no moment, and you've got that. I've got a bad feeling about it. Something's just gone wrong, or something's happening that you think, why? And I think that quote encapsulates it. And if I think of how it's been used in Star Wars so many times, it's usually at that moment something's about to go south. It's that one there, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose.
But hopefully, through our planning, we can come back from it as well. We we come out the right side at the end.
That's a great one to end. It's also from the Mighty Boosh as well, if anybody's ever watched that. Well, Mark, thanks for giving us that final quote for everything you've said today. It's been great having you on. Thanks for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody else who's been listening today. Fascinating subject. I'm sure we'll return to it because this, as I've said already, is not going to go away. So all that leaves for me is to again thank Mark, thank everybody else, and we'll see you on the next ISO show. Goodbye.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.